We're working tirelessly to pursue every opportunity and every bit of evidence we can to hold those responsible accountable.
Toronto's police chief says both hate crimes and car thefts are on the rise in the city, citing significant increases over the past year. Good evening. Chief Myron Demkew addressed the police board about the numbers earlier today before speaking with the media.
When it comes to auto thefts, the chief indicated a car is stolen roughly every 40 minutes in Toronto. CTV's Rahim Ladani has been following the efforts to address the thefts and carjackings and joins us live now with more. Rahim.
Andrea and Nathan, good evening. If you add up all of the stolen vehicles that were stolen in Toronto last year, that's a value of $790 million. Today, Toronto police shared some new tactics they're using to crack down on auto thefts, but the data shows the trend is moving in the wrong direction.
Every 40 minutes, that is how often a vehicle was stolen in Toronto last year. That adds up to more than 12,000 vehicles, and these crimes are escalating across the city.
And we are addressing that by putting our investigative efforts where they're needed the most, which is to address the violent activity that we see happening.
New data reveals there have been 68 carjackings so far in 2024. That's a 106% jump compared to the same period last year. There have also been 34 break-and-enters for auto thefts this year, compared to 22 for all of 2023.
A significant number of those that have been arrested are young offenders. It is a multi-pronged approach with other levels, and we'll leave it at government, that we all need to get on board and address these young individuals that are participating.
Over the past 6 months, a joint task force between the Toronto Police Service and the Ontario Provincial Police have put a dent in carjacking thefts, arresting 121 suspects while recovering 157 stolen vehicles. Now, police are adding automatic license plate recognition readers in their vehicles to scan stolen plates.
And that's going to be a very, very significant impact over time. Our ability to actually detect stolen cars in our presence when our police cars are driving around the city. And
another tool police hope will help catch organized criminals.
Now, those license plate readers are not fully operational yet. However, the process is underway, and they'll be able to track vehicles traveling at up to 230 kilometers per hour. Reporting live, I'm Rahim Ladani. Andrea, I'll send it back to you.
Thanks, Rahim. Toronto police are searching for a suspect in 2 suspected hate-motivated assaults. They have released a photo of the suspect. Police say on Wednesday, a person walking near Dundas and Victoria Street was a target of racial slurs. On Friday, the same suspect is believed to have been involved in a similar incident at Spadina Station. The suspect is described as having a medium build and brown hair and was last seen wearing a green hoodie.
This comes as Toronto police note a significant increase in hate crimes across the city, saying already this year they've responded to more than 300 calls for service. Toronto police say there have been 84 confirmed hate crimes in the city, a more than 80% increase over the same time last year. More than half of those crimes have been anti-Semitic in nature. Since October of last year, there have been 69 arrests and 173 charges laid related to hate crimes, including mischief, uttering threats, and assault.
it is important to have the community have the trust and confidence to come forward with these incidences. And for us to be able to engage with the community in a way that will help hopefully return a sense of safety and security and help prevent these offenses.
Police also report seeing a spike in hate-related graffiti in October and November, with 342 reports of hate-related vandalism since October.
Vaughan's mayor is calling on the city to approve a bylaw which would prohibit protests outside several locations, including places of worship and schools.
It's part of an effort to crack down on what Stephen Del Duca has described as acts of intimidation in recent weeks. CTV Sean Lethon has been following this story and joins us live with more. Sean.
Well, Nathan and Andrea, Del Duca making the announcement in reaction to a protest a week and a half ago, thinking it is necessary to crack down on those who would promote hate and intimidation. But a civil liberties expert I spoke to says there are laws already on the books that could be enforced. A recent protest outside a synagogue in Vaughan has created such a reaction that today Mayor Stephen Del Duca is saying,
enough is enough. What we have seen is not peaceful. It is not respectful. And it does not reflect our values.
Back on March 7th, when pro-Palestinian protesters gathered in opposition to a real estate seminar held inside this synagogue, leading to two sides in a standoff for hours. Stories of threats and intimidation leading Mayor Del Duca to introduce a resolution for staff to draft a bylaw that prohibits demonstration that intimidates or incites hatred within 100 meters of places of worship, childcare centers, schools, hospitals, and other congregate settings.
When people are engaging in protest that crosses the line into inciting hate and intolerance, crosses the line when they're intimidating others, well, at that point, something needs to be done.
Mayor Del Duca has demonstrated leadership at a time when it's desperately needed.
Noah Shack from the United Jewish Appeal applauds the move by Vaughan's mayor, saying people should be free to disagree, but there's no room for intimidation in places where people go to school, work, and pray.
There are lots of places to protest, whether it's at government offices. There's a consulate for the state of Israel here in Toronto. That is an appropriate place if you have disagreement with anything that the government of Israel is doing.
But the Canadian Civil Liberties Association says this bylaw appears to be overbroad and would have a hard time withstanding a constitutional challenge.
It doesn't seem to restrict anything that isn't already criminal and that is already covered and that police can enforce, such as incitement to violence and criminal harassment, all of which police can shut down because it is criminal activity.
Noah Mendelsohn Aviv says this bylaw could cover the types of protests that would limit the right to freedom of expression.
You know, if you're a union that wishes to strike and your area happens to be in a location that is within the zones that have now been excluded and banned from protest, you would have an issue as well. So that's what I mean by overbroad.
Noah Mendelsohn Aviv also talked about the idea of protests being pushed away from these locations, possibly effectively silencing those protests, and that would create the problem with freedom of expression. Reporting live, I'm Sean Leathong. I'll send it back to the desk.
Thank you, Sean. Hamilton police have released an image of a suspect wanted in connection with a murder earlier this month. Police are searching for this man in connection with the murder of 19-year-old Alexander Sirkamuru. He was fatally shot on the street in front of 119 King Street West. Police say they've recovered a black Honda Civic used by the gunman. They're asking anyone with information to come forward.
Police have released new video in connection with a mischief investigation. Between March 11th and March 16th, police received several reports about damage to vehicles in the area of St. Clair Avenue and Deffin Street. Police say a pair of suspects were spotted slashing tires and spray painting vehicles. They are asking anyone with information about the vandalism to come forward. And still to come, the trial has begun for a man accused of killing a Toronto police officer nearly 3 years ago. Umar Zamir has pleaded not guilty in the death of Constable Jeffrey Northrup.
A truck driver is in hospital with serious injuries following a crash involving a school bus late this afternoon. It happened on Highway 12 North between Town Line and Myrtle Road. The CTV News chopper was over the scene earlier. A cube van slammed into the back of the school bus, with the truck driver being airlifted to hospital. The cause of the crash remains under investigation.
More news in a moment, but first, here's a live look at the city tonight. It's been a cloudy day with the chance of flurries later this evening. And Jessica Smith joins us now. And Jess, in Scarborough, at least a few peaks of sunshine made an appearance today. So that kind of felt good.
A sliver, and it really helps, brighten the day quite literally and figuratively. We've seen lake effect flurry off and on throughout the day. The chance of it does continue this evening before we get a little break as we get past midnight. We're still seeing them now, not a ton in the way of accumulation, but it's just been noticeable because we've had such a cool and breezy wind. A very northwesterly flow right now, winds sustained at about 33 kilometers an hour, but those gusts a little stronger in and around the Golden Horseshoe. Now, temperature-wise, it isn't that far off the seasonal mark, but it feels cold in comparison to how warm it has been just a few days ago, breaking temperature records into the 20-degree mark. Now, much different. We're sitting at 1 here in the city. It feels like -5 over towards Peterborough. It feels like -6 through Niagara, feeling like -4. Hamilton feeling like -7. As we head through the rest of the week, we are hovering at or just below the seasonal mark for the most part. And as we officially welcome in the spring season, the astronomical start to tomorrow evening, it is going to be cold. So layer up, and we're not done with the snow just yet, even the chance of a little wet snow. Coming up, I'll have a full look at your long-range forecast, let you know how long the messy weather sticks around and what you can expect as we settle in to a brand new season. But right now, it's back over to Nathan.
All right, thank you, Jess. The man accused of killing Toronto Police Constable Jeffrey Northrup has pleaded not guilty.
Umar Zamir entered the plea today as jury selection begins in his first-degree murder trial. CTV's Mike Walker has been following the proceedings and joins us live now with more. Mike.
Well, Andrea, Nathan, it's been nearly 3 years since Constable Jeffrey Northrop was killed in the line of duty, what police called a deliberate act. Today, Umar Zamir pleaded not guilty to first-degree murder, his lawyer arguing there's much more to this case than meets the eye. Accused of murdering Toronto Police Constable Jeffrey Northrop, Umar Zamir stood before a judge and pleaded not guilty to first-degree murder.
There is so much more to it than the inaccurate and sensational snippets that emerged in the media. I promised that in due time, the truth will emerge. We are hopeful that this trial will be that time.
Northrop's widow and son sat in the front row of the courtroom as the not guilty plea was entered and jury selection began for the murder trial. Northrop was a 31-year veteran with the force and died on July 2, 2021, after he was struck by a vehicle in the underground parking garage at Toronto City Hall shortly after midnight. Northrop, who was dressed in plain clothes, was responding to reports of a robbery. His partner, another plainclothes officer, was also injured in the incident. Toronto police have alleged Zamir purposely drove his vehicle at Constable Northrop, who they said was wearing police identification at the time of the incident. The police chief then called it a deliberate act.
During the course of this dynamic event, Constable Northrop was struck by a vehicle. We believe this was an intentional and deliberate act.
Lawyers spent the day selecting the 12 jurors plus alternates who will hear evidence that will be presented at the trial and ultimately decide whether Zamir is guilty of causing Northrop's death. Zamir has been out on bail since September 2021 under strict conditions, but the reasons and evidence for why bail was granted are covered by a publication ban. Now, jury selection will continue tomorrow morning. Once completed, the trial will proceed, which is expected to take 5 weeks. Reporting live, I'm Mike Walker. Andrea, back to you.
Thank you, Mike. Parking enforcement officers will be around schools in the city this week as part of a safety campaign.
A lot of times the parents just have to give themselves enough time to get to school. I know everybody's in a rush in the morning, but they got to give themselves enough time just to get there, park legally, take those extra few minutes, park on a side street where you're allowed to park, and, and bring your kids up to the school safely. So the stats have shown that parents parking in school zones does cause accidents, causes a lot of problems with the school bus drivers with driving the big yellow buses, not able to see the children. So there is potential for a child getting hit, and we're trying to avoid that.
The Safety Blitz will focus on enforcement within school zones. Officers will be paying special attention to drivers who park illegally, potentially putting children and others at risk. Drivers should expect strict enforcement of all parking violations during the Blitz.
The Toronto District School Board is looking at ways to deal with a major budget deficit. The TDSB says it could see a deficit of nearly $37 million next year, or $21 million if it's allowed to sell some surplus property. The board could also eliminate some seniors programs, cut grade 6 outdoor education, as well as increase permit fees for community groups that use schools. The TDSB says the province is underfunding the board amid increasing costs because of higher wages and benefits. It also says it's not being allowed to close underutilized schools.
There's been another confirmed case of measles in the city, and tonight a warning from Toronto Public Health about a potential exposure risk to others.
It's the second confirmed case of the virus in Toronto this year, a year which has already seen more cases in Ontario than all of 2023. CTV's John Woodward joins us live with more details. John.
Nathan, it was a magic show at the Agincourt Public Library behind me that the child attended, an infant, now with a lab-confirmed case of measles, with public health officials warning others who may have attended that they may have been exposed. Anyone attending the Agincourt Public Library on March 11th could be at risk if they came into contact there with an infant who had recently returned from traveling abroad and attended a magic show between 1 and 5:30 p.m. that Monday.
So for the next 21 days from March the 11th, watch to see if you have fever, cough, white spots in your mouth or reddened eyes, and then that telltale rash that starts from the face and goes downwards. If you have those symptoms, then you should call ahead to a clinic to get tested.
The case is the second to be confirmed in the city of Toronto this year in a season that has seen surprising spread of the highly infectious virus. According to Public Health Ontario, the province has more confirmed measles cases so far this year than in all of 2023. One in January, at least 7 in the past 6 weeks, the blue indicating they got it while traveling, but the 2 cases in gray are registered as spreading in the community. 2 were in the Simcoe area, another confirmed by Hamilton Public Health. A patient returned from a flight arriving in Toronto from Saudi Arabia on March 5th between 3:25 p.m. and 8:30 p.m., prompting one doctor to ask travelers to make sure they're vaccinated before they go anywhere.
This vaccine has been around for 60 years and it works really well, highly effective, and it brought down measles from it being something that all the kids got. It reduced it by 99% to basically almost getting rid of measles.
In some cases, COVID-19 disrupted some children's vaccination schedules, so doctors are also urging parents to make sure their kids are caught up.
We do know among elementary students, some of them may have missed that 4 to 6 year old booster. And that's really what we want to avoid, is getting an outbreak, especially related to a school setting.
The vaccine is covered by OHIP and can be booked through a family doctor or by contacting your local public health unit. As for the infant who visited the magic show at the library, the child is recovering at home.
Public health officials say there's no cause to panic. Vaccination rates are generally quite high in urban areas, but they say it is important to make sure you are vaccinated so that you're not the one who catches it and passes it on to somebody else. Reporting live, I'm John Woodward. Andrea, back to you.
Thanks, John. A recent poll suggests Mayor Olivia Chow's approval rating is still declining.
It's early on in her term, and of course, we have to be cognizant. She was elected in a by-election, so she'll have a shorter term than most mayors do as a result. So these numbers are not surprising given the budget that came down, given some of the reaction we saw to that. But at the same time, we just still don't know if this slide is continuing or if this is part of the stabilization of her numbers.
The Liaison Strategies poll shows Chow's approval dropped 2 points from the previous month, down to 53%. However, that is still within the survey's margin of error. Chow is doing best in downtown Toronto with 66% support and worst in Etobicoke with only 39% support.
A controversial federal environmental program was the focus of politicians of all stripes at the provincial legislature today.
The Ontario Liberals announced their own upcoming environmental plan will not mirror that of their federal counterparts, at least when it comes to a carbon tax. CTV's Queen's Park Bureau Chief Siobhan Morris has the details.
After weeks fighting a tax crowning her the queen of the carbon tax, the Ontario Liberal leader is taking a climate policy option off the table.
Let me be very clear. A carbon tax will not be part of my plan.
The parties struck a panel that will consult and draft a plan. The group's chair says it was early consultation that had them rule out a consumer cost on carbon.
There's been not the best communication with the carbon tax. There are many Ontarians who do not understand it. That is unfortunate. But definitely there needs to be a carrot and a stick approach, and polluters need to pay.
The Ontario Liberals putting some space between themselves, their federal cousins, and an unpopular policy.
That would be a fair thing to say, because we're not going to impose a carbon tax on families in our plan. It's that simple.
Bonnie Crombie's promise not enough to satisfy progressive conservatives.
What she didn't do, Mr. Speaker, is say that she's opposed to the federal carbon tax, Mr. Speaker, the one that's actually going to rise in 2 weeks from today, Mr. Speaker, by a whopping 23%.
Smith feels it would be impactful to hear Crombie join the government plea to Ottawa.
Even Liberal and NDP voices from across the country in saying no, in asking Justin Trudeau to put a pause on the federal carbon tax.
The Ontario Liberals staying out of it.
We're not going to tell the federal government what to do. We're working on Ontario. That's a big enough a chore in itself, especially because this government has done nothing on the climate front.
It's part of why the NDP leader is confused. It took the Liberals so long to stake out a position.
Liberals are still trying to find out who they are, and we don't have time for that. The fight is right now.
Bonnie Crombie will be here at Queen's Park Tuesday morning to talk housing, but you can bet she'll face more questions on carbon pricing and her departure from the federal Liberals as she tries to bring the provincial party back from the brink. Siobhan Morris, CTV News.
A state funeral for former Prime Minister Brian Mulroney will be held later this week. Mulroney, who served as prime minister from 1984 to 1993, died last month at the age of 84 after suffering a fall at his Florida home. Yesterday, his son Mark spoke on CTV's Question Period and reflected on the support his family's received since his father's death.
I don't think you're ever really ready to see somebody that you love leave. And so to say it's difficult, I think that would be an understatement. But I think I speak for my mom, my siblings, our entire family, when I say the outpouring of support has just been unbelievable. And to the thousands of Canadians who have reached out, who have taken a moment to write, even people from outside of the country, it's been truly one of the most beautiful things we've seen, and we thank everybody profusely.
Mulroney will be honored by lying in state in Ottawa tomorrow and Wednesday, followed by lying in repose in Montreal for 2 days at St. Patrick's Basilica. On Saturday, there will be a funeral at Notre Dame Basilica. Several eulogies will be delivered, including from his daughter, Prime Minister Justin Trudeau, Wayne Gretzky, and former Quebec Premier Jean Charest.
On Parliament Hill, MPs will vote tonight on a motion to officially recognize the state of Palestine.
Hours before debate began on that motion, Israel raided the territory's main hospital again. CTV's Annie Bergeron-Oliver reports.
Overnight, Israel's military stormed Gaza's Al-Shifa hospital in what it calls a precision operation to thwart terrorist activity in the region. A video released by the army claiming to show weapons, money, and grenades inside the hospital's halls.
Footage shows terrorists firing from deep within the Shifa complex. Our forces engaged the terrorists. Tens of Hamas terrorists have been detained in the Shifa hospital.
But the Hamas-run health ministry says there were 30,000 patients, medical staff, and displaced people taking shelter inside the hospital. They say more than 200 people were killed or injured within the last 24 hours.
Israeli military has to use proportionate force. It can't use excessive force, and it seems like in this case it's excessive force again. Rocket shells into the facility. The water and electricity was cut off before the Israeli raid.
The situation on the ground in Gaza is getting more dire by the day as food runs out. The World Food Programme says famine is imminent.
We need sustained access. We need quick access. You need enough aid coming in.
The events in the Middle East taking center stage in Parliament today.
Officially recognize the state of Palestine and maintain Canada's recognition of Israel's right to exist and to live in peace with its neighbours.
The NDP have presented a motion urging the government to recognize the state of Palestine, among a range of other calls to action.
Today, the Liberals and the Conservatives have an opportunity to join the NDP and uphold the values of Canadians, to show that Palestinian lives matter as much as anyone's lives matter.
The Liberals say they're in agreement with many aspects of the motion, but it seems, for now, they're not likely to vote with the NDP.
Of course, there are issues with the motion that is presented by the NDP. And we can't change foreign policy based on an opposition motion.
Tonight's vote is non-binding, meaning the government is under no obligation to make anything in the motion official government policy. Annie Bergeron-Oliver, CTV News, Ottawa.
And Justin Trudeau expressed Canada's concern about a planned Israeli offensive in Rafah. The Prime Minister spoke by phone with Benny Gantz, a member of Israel's war cabinet. More than half of Gaza's 2.3 million residents are sheltering in the southern city. U.S. President Joe Biden warned Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu that a military operation would deepen anarchy in the territory. They agreed that a team from Israel will travel to Washington to discuss the prospective offensive.
Vladimir Putin has officially secured a fifth term as Russia's president. This morning, Russia's election commission indicated Putin had received an overwhelming number of votes, winning the election with 87% support. Putin was not facing any credible threat to his power, as most of his opponents had been disqualified from running. Putin's victory will see him remain in power for at least the next 6 years.
In Iceland, a volcano is now relatively stable after erupting for the fourth time in 3 months. The volcano blew its stack Saturday, but infrastructure at a nearby town are safe for now. Authorities erected barriers that have been successful in steering the lava away from the community of 4,000 people. It also looks unlikely to reach the sea, and hazardous gases aren't expected to reach the capital because of strong winds.
Still to come, the city's top complaints. New data from 311 is indicating what your neighbors may be most upset about. We'll have the numbers a little later in the show.
And I'm Pat Foran. Coming up on Consumer Alert, it's Fraud Prevention Month, and we're looking at the #1 scam in Canada. It involves investing in cryptocurrencies. Some people are seeing fake ads or stories online and losing millions of dollars. I'll have my reports just ahead.
And although spring officially kicks off tomorrow, it's not a very spring-like forecast. We have snow on the way as we settle in towards our Tuesday, and the winds are going to be gusty, making it feel a little fresh outside. Coming up, I'll have a full look at your long-range forecast, including how long the snow is sticking around. And stay with us. We've got another full night of great shows for you right here on CTV.
Canadians lost almost $310 million to investment scams last year, and many of them involved investing in cryptocurrencies.
Well, there are legitimate ways to invest in cryptocurrencies. The fraud usually involves fake ads or news stories you see online. Here's Pat Foran and Consumer Alert. Pat.
Nathan and Andrea, a Toronto man says he invested in cryptocurrencies after he saw a story online involving a business reporter. But the story was a fake, and he ended up being scammed out of $17,000.
What if I told you, Gurdeep, that your money, it's probably not even in Canada anymore? It's gone.
Yeah, I can understand that.
Gurdeep Sabarol of Toronto says about a year ago he saw a story online about a well-known business reporter who was able to earn a second income just by investing $350 in cryptocurrencies.
She's making so much money.
He decided to use the same trading platform and started investing in crypto.
I invested $2,000, and within very short while, it started going up.
Sabarol says the trading company he found online told him to download remote access software so they could help him with his trades. When he did that, money started to disappear from his bank accounts.
I had 3 e-transfers done on my account, $3,000 3 times, and $9,000 gone.
In the end, Sabarol was scammed out of $17,000.
AI is accelerating the speed with which people are being fooled.
Cybersecurity experts say criminals are creating fake ads and news stories to lure in investors. Some of the most famous fake ads involve Elon Musk. You need to be skeptical if you see celebrities promoting cryptocurrencies, and never download remote access software to your computer.
AnyDesk is remote control software that takes control of your computer completely, as if the criminal was sitting in front of it.
Sabarol had been holding out hope he could recover his funds, but now realizes the money is gone for good.
Once you say that you want a return, they just disappear.
And we did a story about a year ago with a senior who also saw a fake investment ad. She downloaded AnyDesk to her computer, and scammers took her entire life savings of $750,000. On your side, I'm Pat Foran.
If you have a consumer story idea, email us at alert@ctv.ca.
All right, talking about the forecast. So spring begins tomorrow, but it feels like winter is going to begin in a way.
Absolutely. I was out today walking the dog, and whew.
You know what? I pulled my winter jacket back out for the first time in a while. It's been so mild. I was like, do I put the gloves on? Is it too much?
Yes, gloves and hat.
Oh, they're always in my car.
All of it.
It's always in my trunk, that and my snow pants. You never know. But it is going to get a little bit cooler as we head through the week, so just be prepared for the weather to get, you guessed it, even chillier as we officially welcome in the spring season tomorrow evening. Weather is brought to you by Train, the most reliable heating and cooling brand. It's hard to stop a train. Now, we've seen a few peaks of sunshine here and there. It hasn't been a total wash of a day, but those few lake effect flurries humbling us, reminding us that winter, it ain't done with us just yet. We do officially step into the spring season tomorrow at about 11:30 p.m., but we will start celebrating first thing in the morning. Temperature-wise, it'll be +1. It's feeling like -5 here in the city. It is still around the seasonal mark. We just have a wind chill for the first time in a while. Ottawa's at -1, feeling like -7. Up towards Wyerton, they're at -1, also feeling like -7. So it's not terrible. It's just, It's not great, right? Temperature-wise tonight, we'll be at -3. It'll feel like -9. We're still kind of right on par for that seasonal mark. And then you factor in the wind chill, and we're very, very normal. It just feels abnormal because it has been so mild throughout the winter season and the beginning of the meteorological spring season on March 1st. Tomorrow getting into the day, we're looking at 2 for the high. We should be around 5. Everybody should seasonally be around 4 or 5 degrees, and we are hovering at or just below that mark. We are watching for snow. The bulk of the system is sitting in northern Ontario, but as it sinks its way down, we are going to see it push snow into southern Ontario thanks to some lake effect flurry activity. And despite having a southwest wind, it is going to be cool because there's quite a dip in the jet stream. Heading through the rest of our night, pretty nice. We get a bit of a break from some of the active weather. Starting off tomorrow, fairly dry for the bulk of that morning commute. Heavier, though, for communities along those eastern shorelines of Lake Huron and Georgian Bay. And then we're just watching for light snow. It is not a significant amount of snow, but it doesn't need to be to impact that commute. As we get into Wednesday, a little sunshine to start, and we'll see peaks of sun here and there, but the flurry activity just sits stalled and rotates over us as we head in towards almost the end of the week. Temperature-wise, when you see these pinks on the map, you know that it's really, really cold air, and we're looking at this kind of sitting over us, not really lifting until we head in towards at least the end of the weekend. Temperature-wise tomorrow for the official start of the spring season, we're pretty close to seasonal. It gets a little colder, though, as we head in towards our Wednesday night, and the likelihood of some leftover flurries, even into our Thursday really early morning, is going to be there. Sunny on Thursday, but one of the coldest days of the week. As we head in towards the end of the week and the weekend, we dip down pretty significantly for that daytime high on Friday. And then by the time we get to Saturday, Sunday, in towards next week, we start to rebound a little bit. And in the extended long range, it is very seasonal. We just have to get there first. Andrea, Nathan.
Thanks, Jess. The Toronto Island community is still reeling from the devastating fire which destroyed a beloved clubhouse on Wards Island.
Now, investigators say it'll take weeks and possibly months before they're able to determine what sparked the blaze. CTV's Beth McDonnell has the details.
Heavy equipment operators sift through pieces of charred wood. Quadrant by quadrant, they're trying to uncover what sparked the large fire at what was a cherished gathering space and restaurant.
By the time I got out here, it was already leveled.
Peter Freeman and his family own and have run the Island Cafe since 2010. Early Sunday morning, it, along with the Ward Island Association's clubhouse, built more than 80 years ago, burnt to the ground. Among the items lost, he says, a document with names of Islanders who died in the war and an old big brass bell. But he remains hopeful thanks to the outpouring of support.
In an awful situation, there's all this upswelling, and that's kind of heartening in these times.
The history that was inside matters to people. The photos, memorabilia, and trophies. Fire crews say any artifacts that are found will be put aside. Both destroyed buildings are owned by a trust leased on land from the province until 2092. Its chair expects when the investigation and insurance are settled, a new space will rise.
I'm not sure whether anybody had been actually in the building, but there are cameras that are being reviewed. I think they've been provided to Toronto Fire. The videos of the site before the incident, so we shall see.
Fire crews say finding the cause involves speaking with witnesses and looking at sources of ignition.
So there's various ignition sources in an occupied building that they have to look at, address, and either eliminate and consider or not eliminate because of the extent of damage. So it's a very complex process.
As that process unfolds, residents keep coming to see the destruction firsthand.
We were all crying for, and hugging each other all morning.
Everybody's personal history here is tied in some way with that building. So, a lot of deep feelings.
Spared some tents and furniture belonging to the cafe.
The cafe, we could have some containers, and we could have a tent, and maybe reduce the menu, and I think a lot of people could be working and enjoying a coffee here soon.
He says there is a lot of work to do moving forward, but summer here will not be canceled. Beth McDonnell, CTV News.
Still to come, the benefits of cognitive behavioral therapy and why a remote session with a therapist may be just as helpful as seeing them in person. Cognitive behavioral therapy is a technique used to help people deal with a range of mental and physical conditions.
During the pandemic, many turned to online therapy, but is it as good as in-person treatment? Our health reporter Pauline Chan has that story.
Bounce Back programs, less speaking.
Bounce Back is a free online CBT or cognitive behavioral therapy program, one of several that started in Ontario during the pandemic.
CBT is used for a range of both mental health and physical conditions. So it's been shown to be effective for anxiety, for depression, in some cases for alcohol use disorder or for eating disorders, body dysmorphic disorder. And it's also been shown to have some effect on conditions such as chronic pain complaints or myalgic encephalitis, otherwise known as chronic fatigue syndrome.
Jason Bussa looked at randomized controlled studies with more than 5,300 patients involved.
What we ended up finding across a range of conditions was there appeared to be little to no difference in the effectiveness. So that's good news, especially when you consider here in Canada, we are a very large country with sparse population in many areas. And we know that barriers to access to CBT are a very real issue for many individuals.
Some benefits of remote therapy: savings in time and money for travel and parking. And some patients are more relaxed in the privacy of their own home. CBT can be done one-on-one or in groups as needed.
There is reason for provinces and territories to consider expanding this model of care. In particular, when you think about recent surveys that have been done in Canada that find about 29% of Canadians report not seeking out mental health care treatment because of financial reasons.
That's up from 18% the year before. Bosa also cites the military, First Nations, and others in remote locations as groups who might benefit the most from expanding online CBT access. Pauline Chan, CTV News.
The use of artificial intelligence is growing, and one popular video platform wants to make sure viewers know what they're looking at. YouTube creators are now required to label videos that contain AI. It's part of the company's effort to be more transparent about content that could confuse or mislead users. Creators will see a checklist asking if their upload makes a person say or do something they didn't do, whether it alters video of a real place or event or depicts a scene that didn't actually occur.
One of the world's most elusive street artists has left his latest work on the side of a building in England. This large mural, painted by Banksy, appeared yesterday on the side of a building in North London. The artwork features green paint, which mimics leaves that are missing from a tree located beside the building. The mural also features a stencil of a person holding a hose. The local member of parliament says he'd like to see it stay, but worries it won't last because of the poor condition of the building's exterior.
Still to come, nationwide home sales dipped in February. We'll have more on the latest numbers from the Canadian Real Estate Association when we come back.
The art of making music.
Stomp returns to the Toronto stage for a limited run, and we'll give you a glimpse of the energetic show.
CP24 Breakfast, where Toronto gets its everything every morning.
There's so much more to it than the inaccurate and sensational snippets that emerged in the media.
Updating our top stories, a not guilty plea from the man accused of killing a Toronto police officer in a parking garage in July of 2021. Jury selection began today in the trial of Umar Zamir. He's been charged with first-degree murder in the death of Constable Jeffrey Northrup.
And we are addressing that by putting our investigative efforts where they're needed the most, which is to address the violent activity that we see happening.
Toronto's police chief speaking out today about a dramatic rise in auto thefts in the city. Police say carjackings are up 106% from the same time last year. The chief also addressed a dramatic rise in hate crimes in the city, with more than half of those reported linked to anti-Semitism.
Enough is enough. What we have seen is not peaceful, it is not respectful, and it does not reflect our values.
In the wake of heated protests, the Mayor of Vaughan is hoping City Council will pass a new bylaw to ban demonstrations within 100 meters of places of worship. The Canadian Civil Liberties Association doubts such a bylaw would withstand a constitutional challenge.
Remember to keep up to date day and night through our website, ctvnewstoronto.ca, and by downloading the CTV News app. And if you have a news tip, photos, or video of breaking news, let us know.
On the markets, the Canadian dollar is up a fraction to 73.87 cents U.S. American benchmark oil added $1.58 to close at 82.16 a barrel. And the TSX Composite Index lost 11 points to end the day at 21,837.18.
The Business Report is brought to you by Canadian Western Bank, the bank built for business.
New data has been released outlining the top complaints to 311.
CTV's Natalie Johnson has more on what may be making your neighbors upset.
Broken bins topped the list for Torontonians last year when it came to common complaints received by 311. The call center fielded nearly 500,000 service requests overall in 2023. The stats now out on what was trending in Toronto.
It's a really big city, and what's fascinating is to see what matters to different people in different parts of the city.
Torontonians submitted more than 487,000 service requests via phone, web, and mobile app. Nearly 20,000 of them had to do with damaged bin lids, while the next most common complaint was for potholes. Injured and dead wildlife prompted more than 32,000 service calls combined, while property standards and maintenance violations rounded out the top 5.
We know that the tax rate is increased, and with the tax rate comes greater responsibilities and performance against that.
Meanwhile, the phones were also ringing off the hook with talk of that tax. Of the 848,000 general inquiries handled last year, questions and queries about property tax billing and the vacant home tax were the top topics. The city aims to respond to 80% of 311 calls within 75 seconds, which it achieved. Last year, among 1.3 million phone interactions, average speed of answer, just 46 seconds. Average call handling time, less than 5 minutes. The sudden spikes in that data came during the city's 3 major snowfalls.
We are stronger!
And leading up to the mayoral by-election, when thousands of people called in with questions about how and where to cast their ballots.
For most people, what matters about city politics is doorstep issues. Like, it's literally what's happening at your front door, around your home, in your daily life.
A window into what has Toronto taxpayers talking and the service standards they expect from City Hall. Natalie Johnson, CTV News.
The Canadian Real Estate Association has released its latest housing numbers. February home sales dipped 3.1%, while prices stayed flat. That's compared to January sales, which were up 3.7%. The agency says the fact that prices were unchanged from January to February is noteworthy, as they dropped 1.3% between December and January.
And gas prices have not remained unchanged. They jumped 12 cents a liter in the last week, and that's just the beginning as we head towards summer.
Oil is going to be moving up about $7 or $8 a barrel. That'll be good for about a 10 cent a liter increase. We know that mid-April we have the switchover from summer blends of gasoline to winter blends of gasoline. It does cost more for refiners to produce that particular blend. And of course, you have the 3.72 cent a liter increase on April the 1st, which is the federal government's carbon tax.
Dan McTagg says there could be a 20 cent per liter increase between now and the May 2-4 weekend or July 1st. Supply is not meeting a surge in demand right now.
A new survey suggests an overwhelming number of Canadian business owners want Ottawa to fast-track green tax credits. 90% of respondents to the KPMG poll want delivery expedited. 83% say they require more assistance and incentives to decarbonize. KPMG insists the process should be fast and easy for companies to access the clean energy investment tax credits. More than 530 small and medium-sized businesses were surveyed.
Tonight, praise in Parliament for Canada's 18th Prime Minister.
Hearing everybody speak so positively, probably not what he was used to, but he would have loved it.
Brian Mulroney's family in Ottawa as a week of remembrance begins. Later on CTV National News.
And a reminder, the CTV News at 6 podcast is available as a download every weeknight. And a special What's Good to those of you listening to the newscast live on News Talk 1010.
Cherry blossoms in Washington, D.C. have reached peak bloom at their second earliest time ever. Yesterday, the U.S. National Park Service announced peak bloom yesterday, following one of the warmest winters on record. Peak bloom is when 70% of the Yoshino cherry trees that line the National Mall and the tidal basin are open. They typically bloom for several days. Here in Toronto, blossom watchers say it's too early to predict peak bloom, as the buds are still mostly brown.
And with that, spring begins tomorrow, but doesn't really feel like it.
No, it's going to be so cold. I say cold in comparison to how warm it has been. Obviously, we know it can be colder, but this is not unusual for this time of year. Getting this kind of blast of wintry-ish weather, winter-esque, winter-like, it's not unusual, but it's just unwelcome for a lot of folks, especially since it's been so warm. The good news is there is a rebound in the long-range forecast, but for the first few days, as we get into the official start of spring, a little chilly out there. We're still looking at a few light flurries in towards that eastern shoreline of Lake Huron, so Goddard down towards London. Windsor getting it as well, but it's falling more as a rain through Windsor now, just because it's a little bit warmer. If we're sitting at 1 in Windsor, it feels like -4 here in the city. We're at 1, feeling like -5, but that wind chill is a little wicked. Up towards Barrie, it feels like -10. Getting into the official start of spring tomorrow, it is going to be the opposite of warm adjacent. We're sitting at 2 degrees, but that is pretty seasonal. It's just been a while since we've been to that point. But then as we look ahead in a long range, we look ahead to next Monday. Not that I'm skipping ahead in time at all, but it will be warmer next week.
Okay, thanks, Jess. Be sure to join Omar Sachedina tonight at 11 for the CTV National News, followed by Zraida Allman with our next local newscast at 11:30.
In the meantime, our coverage continues anytime on CP24 and online at ctvnewstoronto.ca.
For Jessica Smith and all of us here at CTV News, thanks for watching. Have a good night.